A year ago this week, we made a huge batch of one of my all-time favorite snacks, guacamole, and then we freeze-dried it. Well, 1 year later, we're going to open up one of those packs and see how this freeze-dried version holds up. Let me show you how we made it.
I'm going to start off by toasting a little coriander seed. We want to really maximize the flavor in this dip. We're also going to toast a little cumin seed. Now, we don't want to toast it too much, just enough to start to give it a little color and for it to become aromatic. As far as the spices go, this is basically what we're looking at. We've got salt, and then we're going to do some freshly cracked black pepper using the pepper cannon. Arguably the best pepper meal on the planet. I kid you not. Absolutely amazing. When it comes to this recipe, and I'll put a link in the description box, just remember that this is a very to-taste type of dip. You obviously have to have avocados. Salt and pepper is always a good start, but really everything else, you can kind of do whatever you want. You're going to see me add my favorite ingredients, but you can change them up, add less or more, depending on what you personally like. Let me know in the comment section below, what are a few of your favorite ingredients in your guacamole dip? All right, using the good old mortar and pestle to grind our cumin and our coriander, bringing that beautiful fresh flavor. And for me, this is a good base of seasonings. We could stop right here, or we can kind of kick up the heat with a little red chili flakes. Now, if you want to go with something a little more flavorful, like a chipotle powder or a chili ancho powder or something like that, that would be great as well. An optional ingredient is something called ascorbic acid. This is also known as vitamin C. This is not only going to add a little acidity to our guacamole dip, but it's also an antioxidant, which is going to help preserve the color. I want a beautiful, bright green, vibrant looking dip. It's going to be very appealing, very inviting, and this ascorbic acid will help us get there. A little secret ingredient when it comes to making guacamole. 100% completely optional, but if you do add it, it'll make everything pop and it'll look beautiful. All right, let's continue with the rest of the ingredients, starting with the avocados. There are lots of different avocado varieties available depending on where you live, but the one that tends to be preferred for the guacamole dip is the Hass avocado because of its richness and its creamy texture. And you want to try to find avocados that are perfectly ripe, something that has a little give, not too mushy, not too firm, and this is perfect. Next up, we're going to be using some tomatoes. I've got a couple different varieties here. I've got Roma and whatever the heck this is, and I would say just use whatever you have on hand. If you happen to be growing your own and you have a Nebraska wedding, a Cherokee purple, or a green zebra, that would be amazing. Next up, we're going to be adding some purple onion. Now, once again, all of these ingredients are optional and they are added to taste. So this is a very personal preference. So if you want to add a sweet onion or maybe even green onions or just omit the onions altogether, you could certainly do that. But adding these vegetables is going to add a beautiful flavor and texture. Let's look at the peppers. In this case, we're going to be using the jalapeno pepper, mostly because I don't want this to be mind-blowingly hot. But if you want to kick up the heat, you could use whatever pepper you want. Right here in front of me, we have a Chilean pepper, beautiful flavor. We also have chocolate habanero, a little bit hotter, actually a lot hotter, with a beautiful fruity, smoky quality. Pairs perfect with this dip, although it does add a considerable amount of heat. The serrano pepper is also another very respectable pepper that you could use in your guacamole. We cannot forget about the garlic. I like adding a little bit of garlic, and where I live, the quality of the fresh garlic isn't very good, but I can get high quality pre-minced garlic, and that's what we're going to be using in this recipe. We do not want to forget about the fresh limes. This is a Persian lime, and fresh lime juice is just going to add a beautiful brightness. It's going to add that acidity. It's going to be absolutely incredible. And once again, all of these ingredients are added to taste. So if you're making this at home, squeeze your lime juice and then just add it a little at a time until you get the flavor that you're looking for. Finally, let's look at some herbs. Now, I'm going to be using an herb called culantro, also known as shadow benny. This is a cousin to the cilantro, very similar flavor, but the culantro is more readily available where I live. In addition to that, we're also going to be using fresh mint leaves. Now, for me, this ingredient takes our guacamole to a completely different level. And although it is optional, if you do add it, it's going to give it that je ne sais quoi quality. All right, let's get these ingredients mixed up. This looks perfect, and it's now time to add our ascorbic acid. If you're going to be using this, a good rule of thumb is to add 1 gram of ascorbic acid for every 500 grams of avocados that you use. So basically, a little more than a pound, you're going to add 1 gram of this vitamin C powder. At this point, we are just going to mash this up. And once again, personal preference. If you want it ultra smooth, place this in a food processor. If you want it a little on the chunky side, just don't mash it up nearly as much. And now, the vegetables. When it came to processing the vegetables, I ran most of it through my food processor. I wanted it finely chopped. Traditional guac is made in a molcajete or a mortar and pestle, and usually your vegetables are pounded down. And so finely chopped everything, and we're going to be adding it a little bit at a time. When we make this, we like to start a little light on the vegetables, give it a taste, and then just make any adjustments as necessary. It's easier to add than it is to take away, and that's especially true for the lime juice. The salt, you want to be careful with those 2 ingredients, otherwise you can end up with something too salty or too acidic. This looks just about perfect. By the way, we have roughly 27 pounds of guacamole already made. We're going to try to slam all of that into the Harvest Right Large Pro, and that's going to be about pushing that freeze dryer to capacity, so we'll see how it freeze dries. Absolutely beautiful. We are going to freeze it in the freeze dryer, so let me show you what we're going to do to get that set up. My initial freeze is going to come down to -20, and we're going to add 10 hours of extra freeze time. Dry temperature is good at 125, and extra dry time is good at 12 hours. Absolutely perfect. All we do now is hit start and let the freeze dryer cool before we add our food. 15 minutes have passed, our freeze dryer has cooled down, and now we're going to load up our trays, close the door, and let the freeze drying cycle complete. Well, 86 hours later, this is where we're at. We're in that final stage of drying, and I just want you to see right here, top right-hand corner, 86 hours and 13 minutes have passed. We are just starting the extra dry time cycle. So notice that 12 hours of additional dry time that we added, that's counting down right now. And as far as the 86 hours, 30 hours of that was freezing, and then 56 hours was drying, for those of you that are always asking, how long does it take to do a batch? I will say, though, that this was an extra big batch, and everyone's results are going to vary depending on the conditions that you have your freeze dryer in. Is it humid? Is it hot? Is it cold? So your results may vary. For me, look how much ice was sublimated on the walls. I mean, that is packed, and this freeze-dried guacamole dip looks incredible. I like to test the temperature once I'm done to make sure there's no cold spots. If there are cold spots, I will put it back into the freeze dryer and let it dry a couple more hours. When it comes to portioning this up, you can put it in a mason jar and vacuum seal it. Or if you want something a little more long-term storage, you can do Mylar bags with an oxygen absorber. What we normally do is put it into a bowl, break it up, and I actually weighed this before we freeze-dried it and then after we freeze-dried it. And the difference between those two numbers just let me know how much water was removed. I also knew how many portions that I wanted, so for me, 65 grams of the freeze-dried version was just perfect so that when we reconstituted, we would get an 8-ounce portion of guacamole dip. Being that we have a freeze-dried business, it's important to have a consistent product. So for us, every package is going to have the exact same amount weighed and then added to the Mylar bag. This particular funnel came from freeze-drying-supplies.com. Incredible tool to easily get your freeze-dried product into your mason jar or your Mylar pouch or whatever. And notice that we're working pretty quick. At this stage, I don't want to mess around too much. Get it in the pouch, seal it up, and then be done. Last thing is an O2 absorber. What I like to do is keep the unused O2 absorbers in a resealable vacuum pouch. We got this from the sausage maker, and very handy. We use it constantly, just over and over again. This little indicator lets me know whether or not the oxygen absorbers have been activated. So red means good. If it's blue or purple, that means that they have been activated by oxygen, and you might want to consider, not using them. So at this point, I'm going to work super fast, and I'm just going to drop one in each one of these packs. O2 absorbers have a size rating, so depending on the container or the package that you're putting the O2 absorbers in, you might want to go bigger, smaller. You can always add multiple packs to one container. It doesn't matter. All right, so this is what I had left over. We're going to go ahead and seal it up. And this is a battery-operated handheld vacuum sealer. You could also plug it in if you want to go wired, no big deal. Just a couple seconds later, this is sealed up, and we'll put that away. The final step is to seal the bags. This is an impulse sealer, and depending on the quality of what you're sealing will determine at what level you seal it at. So if you're using a 7 mil thick Mylar bag, you're going to set it to 7. You know, if you're using a 5 mil thick Mylar bag, you're going to set it to 5. So those numbers basically correspond with the thickness of the bag that you're sealing.
Time to taste the freeze-dried guacamole. And just so you know, we made this February the 6th, 2024, a year and 2 days ago. Right now, avocados are in season, and so it's fairly easy to get them relatively cheap, 30 cents, 50 cents, big, beautiful Hass avocados. So when they're in season, we get a whole bunch of them, make this amazing guacamole dip, freeze-dry it, and then store it for later use or put it on our menu. This is one of our more popular freeze-dried items that we offer. So absolutely brilliant. Tomorrow's the big day. We're just gonna open up a couple packs, add some water. All the work has already been done, so it should be pretty easy. Let's get into this pack and see how it came out.
All right, little label that I made says to open pouch, remove the oxygen absorber, add 3/4 cups of room temperature water, and then let it reconstitute. Easy enough. Let's move the O2 absorber, and there's really no need for a moisture absorber when you're doing long-term storage like this, although you can put it in there. It's not going to hurt. And if you need any of the items that we showed in this video, check the description box. I'll put a link to all the different things that we used. We're adding 3/4 cup of room temperature water. I've got a little bit extra in that little bowl in the event we need some more. But with things like this, add a little bit at a time and then just give it a stir. And then if you need to thin it out a little bit, you can always add more water. And there we go. Wow, that was perfect. Oh yeah, look at that consistency. Great looking avocado dip. Let's come a little closer. Wow, all of the aromas from this dip has just come to life. It's so cool. Let's get a little chip in there and give it a taste.
Freeze-dried guacamole, check it out. Absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful consistency. Not too thick, not too thin. Great color. It smells so fresh. Let's just give it a bite. I gotta tell you, not all food retains its original texture when you freeze dry it. Some work better than others. Avocados, especially in the form of guacamole dip, has zero loss of quality. This literally tastes as if I just made it. Let me just go in for another bite here. Loving the texture that I'm getting from the different pieces of avocado, the vegetables. It's got a nice spicy bite to it. Oh, wow. Oh, that's good. A lot going on in this dip. I'm going to tell you right now, spicy, perfect level of acidity, seasoned incredibly well. The cumin adds this beautiful, nutty, smoky flavor. That mint just almost brings it to life. It kind of pops. Here we go again. I also think this is a great portion size. 8 ounces after it's been reconstituted. Perfect for 1 or 2 people if you're not too greedy. Maybe if you're having to get together, you know, open up 2 or 3 packs, you're in business. This reconstituted in less than 5 minutes. Some freeze-dried food takes longer to reconstitute. 30 minutes, an hour. Sometimes you have to let it hang out in the refrigerator overnight, depending on the food, how thick it is, and what you're reconstituting. Not this. I mean, you could whip it up on the fly, serve it just a few minutes after you add water, and it is absolutely perfect. I'm going to try it without the chip, just to get the full experience. There we go. Oh, that is just so creamy and buttery and absolutely amazing. I'm going to put a recipe link in the description box below for this guacamole dip. If you make it, eat it fresh, it's going to be absolutely incredible. If you happen to have a freeze dryer, I invite you to make a bunch of it, freeze dry it, stored in Mylar bags, little O2 absorber, and you can now enjoy this incredible dip anytime you want for 25 or 30 years. Or heck, maybe this will be the thing that kickstarts your freeze-dried food business, kind of like it did for us. Speaking of freeze dryers, let me just say this one quick little thing about freeze dryers. We've been freeze drying food for a little over 2.5 years. We started a freeze-dried food business, and we now have 5 freeze dryers that we operate, kind of on a commercial level. The freeze dryer that you saw in today's video was one from Harvest-Right. And if you are in the market currently for a freeze dryer and you're in the middle of doing your due diligence, I invite you to check out Harvest-Right. I'm going to put a link to their website in the description box below. With that being said, I don't think that Harvest-Right should be the only option that you look at. There are other brands on the market that have done just an incredible job developing better freeze dryers. Companies like the Blue Alpine freeze dryer and the Stay Fresh freeze dryer, which we use both of those brands in our commercial operation, are really giving Harvest-Right a run for their money, not only by coming out with better freeze dryer with higher quality components that can freeze dry food faster and more evenly and things like that, but just incredible customer service. And all those things are super important to consider when making an investment in a freeze dryer. I'm going to put a link to the Blue Alpine freeze dryer and the Stay Fresh freeze dryer in the description box below as well, so that you can get a fuller picture of what's available. In a later video, we'll go over the details of those machines in the event that you're interested. All right, guys, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about our freeze-dried guacamole or the process of freeze drying, or the different machines that we use, let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're into different fun recipes, food preservation, freeze drying, maybe even charcuterie, the craft of working with meat and turning it into salami and sausage, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. We've got all kinds of really fun videos on the horizon. Thanks a lot for being here. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. I'm about to go to town on this dip. That's awesome.